we're so blessed to have the leadership of Don and Sondra Samuels in our community. And we're also blessed that they're able to be with us today. Don and Sondra started with a vision 2 years ago for healing our city, where they put up a couple tents along Broadway Avenue in the midst of the disruption and all that was going on during the time following the murder of George Floyd. So it's just a blessing. So we want to give honor to Don and Sondra for the visionary leadership that they provide, and for this anniversary of the trial of George Floyd, to have some reflection on that, and invite Don and Sondra to share some of their vision and experience with that. So Don and Sondra, thank you. And I don't see you on my screen. Oh, there we go. I can breathe again. So Don and Sondra, can you maybe begin with the inspiration that what inspired you to come up with Healing Our City? You're mute.
You're on mute.
Good evening, everyone. Let me just say that if I am more inspired now than I was when we started, just by seeing the faces here, so many familiar faces from so many different places and denominations and faiths, and to see that there is a coming together, that it's possible, and my heart is warmed. Yeah, so I think Sondra's description of how it started might be more interesting than mine, because it's funny. It's a little funny, but I'll just start it off and then let her take it over, because her version is better than mine. So of course the George Floyd had been killed. There have been a few days of rioting, and especially at the area of Lyndale and Broadway, there was a definite takeover by the criminal element. There were flea markets there right after selling the stuff stolen at Target. It was advertised on social media that you could purchase stuff there. And so it became a symbol of defiance and flouting of the law. And the law couldn't do anything about it, even when there were a couple of police cars parked up on the street across from there. The hundreds of people who were in the parking lot would have overwhelmed any attempt for a skimpy police force. So on Broadway, cars were speeding. It felt like we had entered into a period of uncontrolled, unrestrained lawlessness. And so after prayer one morning, I was moved to drive over to that parking lot and to just stand there and just take in that vibe, and to kind of think about or pray about or be there with God, really. And it was in that time that I had the idea to put up a tent at that point, a pop-up 10-foot square tent, and to have a prayer mat under it, and imagine it in the middle of this crime-ridden parking lot, another energy, another statement, another a predictor of the future, inspired by and contained by God's Spirit, just being present in the middle of chaos. And so I called Sondra up, and she can take it from there.
Yeah, thanks, honey. And I too want to just tell everybody, it's so great to see all of you. Oh my goodness. It makes me want to go back. Has it been a year, Pastor Kelly?
Yes, exactly.
Wow. It's been a year. Man, I miss you all. Thank you for being here tonight. Yeah, I'm gonna, one of the things, so Don just talked about, that feeling of angst. And when he starts feeling anxious, he does kind of steal away and just kind of in his thoughts and in prayer, right? You never quite know what he's doing, but he can't sleep. And that, Don, what you didn't mention is the angst that you felt that was really the angst that we were all feeling, which started with the murder of George Floyd. Right. And so we knew that everything that was happening was a spillover, right? The violence, the looting, it was just this conspiracy of almost like 400 years of trapped racial, injustice. And so when I was out and Don was like, meet me in the parking lot, just meet me in the parking lot. I have an idea, just meet me in the parking lot. And I don't think I met you in the parking lot that day, Don. For some reason, we kind of crossed paths, but anyway, I knew he was up to something. And then that parking lot that you wanted to be in, where most of the drug activity was and so on, couldn't work out. Too many potholes, too much danger. And so we eyed another parking lot where you all came, many of you who came that summer. So not, the year before, right after George Floyd was murdered. But I know Don's vision. So here's where all of you come in, many of you, and how we can't do anything by ourselves. Don's vision, Don, you had originally said we were going to have a tent and a mat. Right. And one mat, right? And then we're going to invite everybody to come to this little tent and this little mat. And it's like, Don, how on earth are we going to like invite the city to a mat? And then the thing about it is everybody started just kind of coming around. So Don, I don't know how. So then Brian and Pastor Kelly and Laura, and so this vision of, and more people, this vision of a mat under a tent, when all of God's children got their hands on it, became what you all experienced. And that is the that the way that unfolded, the way even what we did last year virtually unfolded, was so much of it. And Pastor, wonderful. That you honored us today, but we are us. like it was like really all of us. And so beautiful and majestic.
Yeah, it definitely was the spirit at work. And when the spirit's at work, it catches you in the middle of a stride on your way to a particular place at a particular time. And so it's at first an inconvenience, always. And it's being just flexible enough, just curious enough, just wondering to go and to be led by that little tug and be part of something bigger. And that was how it happened, and people just came together.
Yeah.
And the owner of the lot gave us the space. It was nicely barricaded because of the riots, and then we just put up those tents. I think we just credit carded the tent and trusted that God would provide. So and boy, did God provide. Thanks to Catherine and her fundraising and all the folks who donated. We had a book for people to write their names, and as many times as they came, we had those prayer strips, ribbons that were mounted there. We had, of course, a prayer tent and a fellowship tent. The prayer tent had 9 rugs on it, and people could kneel, sit, or stand for 8 minutes and 46 seconds, which is what we thought at the time was George Floyd's torture duration. And we had a singing bowl that was rung before and after the prayer. And before the bowl was gonged, a short reading was read, and people sat quietly and then filed out. And after each seating, the benches were sprayed, the chairs were sprayed down, of course,
Yeah, right.
because of COVID, and it was a meaningful thing. And after all of that, we we shut the tents down. It was kind of sad, and of course we had the paintings. I can't emphasize enough how important those were to set the mood, to create an ambiance of inclusiveness and beauty in the middle of a crisis and a divisive time. So those paintings were done during the campaign, during the event. And so after it was done and we took everything down, time passed, and of course the trial for George Floyd started or was starting, and we scheduled to restart a virtual tent online. And I was not the instigator of that. It was kind of like an upswell of curiosity, questions by folks who thought they were being creative, but the spirit was pushing and driving them. And it was like, okay, let's try this thing. It turns out to have been kind of a format for the modern era, and brought us all together in equal stature. Everybody's like from the chest up or the shoulder up, so we're all the same height. Nobody is taking up more space. The men aren't doing the man spread. None of that. We're all equal, and it created a different kind of ambiance than even a physical gathering sometimes can. And just seeing the faces, you could look at anybody's face you wanted, and it presented a different kind of experience of fellowship. And
So,
yeah, go ahead.
we have about 10 more minutes, and I'm wondering if you and Sondra have been doing this for a long time, going back to the Peace Foundation and probably things before that. And so one of our centerpieces for the Center for Leadership maybe is about racial justice. Right? And so if we could pick because one of the things that isn't necessarily coming through is how strategic you also are and how community comes together. One of the things that impressed me as people were gathering, and this is something that we're wrestling with as a community here, would come together as we gather, is how to be more inclusive. Right? And that there's a tremendous hunger for, to be just crass about it, that white people want to be in relationship with people of color after so many years that not being the case. And so, Sonia, I was always so impressed with how you were strategic in lifting up and pointing to the participants in healing our city on the frames who were people of color, so that they would be seen.
Right.
So if we could get some of your richness and how you are also strategic, or even in your thinking, if not, the planning part of it. We want to learn from you.
Yeah, I tell you, I'll kind of introduce Sondra on this one because she is the consummate. I've never seen anybody who is a real life champion of considering our diversity and being inclusive as she is. And she is kind of like, we're not going to move forward, or we can't move forward if we're not considering this and having some success at diversity. I'm reminded of the scandalous revelation that came on that after the soldiers were killed in Ukraine, the Russian army leaves them behind in the streets. And that's the kind of thing that, of course, American armies don't do. It's like leave no person behind. So they'll send a whole helicopter troop in with 10 more people to take one guy out, and then 3 people get killed in the process of taking the one out. but they keep doing it. And I think if we can look at it that way, that we're not going to leave anybody behind. And I find that Sondra's Sondra's way has that kind of energy in it. That she doesn't want to leave anybody behind. She keeps looking at the screen, keeps obsessing about it, keeps making sure we have the speakers who are diverse. And and I wish, I mean, I'm not as fastidious as she is, so I think she might teach us all something.
Well, yeah, thanks, Don. That's a lot more credit than I deserve for sure. But I know one of the things that was so powerful about the tents is that, we have to like be willing to this country put so much into racism, right? Like, I mean, we put effort into it. We passed laws, we moved from neighborhoods as soon as Black people and brown people moved in. I mean, we get our kids into the best places that have kids who look like them, and or are of the same social standing. And so we have to put as much energy of the last 400 years that it took to get us where we are to get us to a new place, to evolve. And so even with and so that might be uncomfortable, the kind of disruption of things, even with the tent. I mean, I think we all came up with this, Don and Pastor Kelly, was around making sure that the tent was always hosted by a faith community that was led by African Americans. So, we were reaching out. We had Laura Wolf and different people reaching out to the different congregations, not just Christian, of course, because this isn't just about Christian. And so that, I think, had a really fed into this idea of, because it was important that Black people led. It just really was, while everybody else joined. And then our speakers, and who was present, when we were doing the Zoom. We would even there, one thing, and this is a thing we have to be mindful of, is just we have different cultural ways of being, right? And I know Don and I always used to marvel on the story of the Christian community development down in Atlanta, and they would go on interracial church. They would go on bus trips to different places, and they would get a bunch of nice coach buses. But the church was really big and very interracial, so they'd have nice coach buses. But then they'd also have school buses, and they did a first come first serve. So we dealt with this on the Zoom. So they did it first come first serve. So what they started finding was all the white people came early, so they'd all be on the coach buses, and all the Black and brown people would be on the beat up school buses. And it was first come first serve. So
Justice was just.
it was just,
Yeah.
it was equal, it was equality, but it wasn't equitable, and it wasn't justice, because there were different ways of being. And so, even when we did our Zoom, we had a lot of people of color on the Zoom last year when we did Healing Our City, but most of them didn't have their cameras on and they weren't in the waiting room early. And so we would even like call people like, can you please like get on early and put your camera on? Because, you go to the back of the bus if your camera's not on.
Right.
And so it really is in the details of looking around and saying, who's not here?
Yeah.
Who's not on the coach bus? And then literally not passing judgment, making sure we rearrange our space and how we are doing things to make sure all of the diversity of humanity is included.
And let me just finally wrap that up by saying it doesn't just make it more complicated, it make it smaller. And I can tell you for sure that if we had said to the Basilica, you have one day at the prayer tent on Broadway, and to the downtown big churches, they would have been there. Their congregations would have come to hear their pastors speak, and it would have been many times bigger than it was.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was a price paid. but it is the price for a more just world. So
Well, wonderful. At this time, we're going to transition and invite people to go into the breakout rooms to have their conversation, and that'll think I think that's going to be about 15 minutes, and then we'll come back, Don, and there'll be opportunity for the folks to share some of their insights from the conversation and interact with you and Sondra. So for the breakout room is really important. An opportunity to go more intimately in the conversation of welcome, safety, and belonging. So begin by introducing yourself. Choose any question from the list and focus on listening well. Listen from that deeper place and hear from each other in your group and speak from your own experience with the I statement. So again, begin by introducing yourself, and that the conversation is not a debate. It's really to listen from that deeper place. So what stirred you in tonight's conversation? What conversation might you have about who gets on the bus and which bus you get on? So, what does healing our city mean to you? And how are you called to act in the inclusive spirit toward healing our city? So as we regather, invite you into gallery view. And this would be a time to share some of your insights from your breakout conversations. And then we're going to have Don and Sondra speak in conversation and dialogue with our group. So again, what stirred you in tonight's conversation? What does healing our city mean to you? And what's your call to action? So type your insights in the chat. Raise your hand if you would like to speak. So you find your hand raised in the bottom section. And where it says reactions. And please keep your comments brief. And that'll be a prelude before we hear more from Don and Sondra.
Monique has her hand raised, so I've asked her to unmute.
Oh, that happened fast. Okay, I will briefly share that Sue and Deb and I had a wonderful conversation about what healing our city means to us is showing up to things like this and many other places, not being afraid to stumble and make mistakes. And then one thing kind of leads to another, and each place you show up leads you to the next place you should show up, and you meet people along the way that may guide you or follow you. I'll pass.
Thanks, Monique. And there's a few comments in the chat. Steve Delzer says it's amazing to hear again from Don and Sondra how the spirit can surprise us. And we need to reach a place, says Linnea, that we need to reach a place where white people can become comfortable with the idea of reparations and admitting complicity. That's a different thing. Catherine Burns said there's a combination of listening, inviting, and being present to BIPOC people. Essence said that they enjoyed their conversations and there's lots of love and insight. Anybody else has a question or something they'd like to share?
Maggie had her hand up a moment ago.
Who did?
Maggie.
There we go.
I was clapping, I guess, instead of raising my hand. Healing our city just meant the world to me to, well, not being able to get out much during the pandemic, to really see and hear from people that I would not have an opportunity to meet any other way right now. It's inspired me to try and listen to more people who don't look like me, like really listen and hear from them, and hopefully learn enough that I will be honored with some friendships when I do start getting out. But also my mission, I think, is to get more people who look like me to really listen and pay attention to this and be so well educated in what's going on in the history that I can calmly object to racism and just say, oh no, that not without just, no, it's not really the way it was or is, and here's the facts kind of thing, without having to get all aggressive because, oh no, that's not right. I can't remember why, but you're mean, that kind of thing. So.
Thank you. Well, maybe one more and then we'll turn back and to Sondra and Don.
Yeah, Menzie has his hand up.
Wonderful.
Oh yeah. I shared something. I think I was touched by part of what Sondra and Samuel were sharing. Don were sharing about how, as a couple, they started this, but more importantly, we carried this as a community, and that makes me think about how the me and you, which will make the us, the collective, is even much more important to keep up with as our community repetitively experiences violence. It is important for people across all racial lines and other divisions or things that divide us to carry this work together, because at times it feels too heavy to bear, especially for those who are more or disproportionately more affected by it. So the me and you, which is us, is much more needed in such times.
Thanks, Menzie, who was one of our speakers, of course, during Healing Our City. Good to see you, bro.
So Don and Sondra, we want to open this up, and we've been peppering you with questions and give you an opportunity to share more, and perhaps you have some questions that you would like to ask of those of us who are gathered here tonight. So we have about 15 to 20 minutes to engage with the community conversation.
Mm-hmm. I know, just building off of what Menzie was just saying about the collective. I know I was telling Don this, just out of my faith tradition, Judeo-Christian. I'm just realizing, it's just kind of really becoming clear to me that God constantly dealt with the nation of Israel, constantly dealt with tribes, not individuals. Like, individuals were used for whole groups, right? And it was, if there was any salvation, if there was any peace, it was the community. It was the community. And I just, suffering is not for nothing. What we've gone through, I think, is a great opportunity for us to come together across all kinds of differences, but especially race. And with this real understanding that we cannot heal alone and in isolation. And in fact, when I pray now, I try not to say me and I constantly say we and us. And if we could get to that with each other, boy, it would just completely change things.
Don, you
Don,
mute.
you're on mute.
And the trauma we all experienced watching George Floyd die, and seeing how it is possible for that to happen again in some degree or another, in spite of that there are incidents of police murder even after that, and police beating people up or shooting people. It still goes on. George Floyd's death brought us to a point of consciousness raising that brought us face to face with a pain that was always there. George Floyd's death would have been a family affair. The family would have been as traumatized as we all were, shocked, destroyed, and but it became the human family experience. And it said to us all that there is suffering going on in this category of our social relationships and construct, and it means that we are far from well. And Sondra said, you know, there's always something to be gained by pain. That kind of pain, that's healing, creative pain right there. When we come into contact with a pain in the body, you know, something is hurt, you know, my side. I woke up this morning and I just felt something in my side. You go to the doctor and he said, if you had come 1 week later, you would have died. It was always happening there. Something was being destroyed, but we didn't go to the doctor till we felt the pain. And it was, so pain is a gift to go to the doctor, or to go to the God, or to come together with each other when we discover the pain, because we are one human being community, and pain is being felt. And when we begin to join, experience, observe, believe the pain of others, it's a call for us to say, hey, you were wondering what to do next? Here it is. And to let that pain pull us into our activity, our, if not activism, activity, and it becomes, so the person who felt the pain in the side had a project of work that was due the weekend, but the pain in the side was so painful, they called the office and said, I can't come in. I'm going to the doctor. And then the doctor says, take 2 days off. And 2 days later is Friday, the presentation day. So pain can interrupt our mission to, whether it be, you know, the rat race, or you persist to the end, or whatever self-talk thing we're on. The pain stopped us all. It was a beautiful moment of shared experience. That it was a beautiful moment because it was a nasty moment experienced by everybody, which could have easily been a nasty experience once again for the thousands and thousands of time by one family, by one man. And the beauty of it was the sharedness of it. And it changed us all because it said, go to the doctor now. And I believe that Healing Our City was the doctor for those of us here, and we saw the light a little more, and we made it a spiritual experience. It was a spiritual healing versus the economic healing taking place. They're going to build those buildings back, etc. They're going to fix the police. Don't do this, do that. Can't do that anymore, taboo, or you'll be fired. Hearts aren't exchanged yet. This is just the physical healing and the rule healing. But what's going to heal the heart? It's us recognizing the spiritual dimension of the pain and the spiritual dimension of the healing.
So Don, I want to make sure that everyone knows that we've got about 10 more minutes. If you have a question directly to Don and Sondra, this is the time to take advantage of that opportunity. And Sondra and Don, if you have questions or that you have to the participants, this is the time for you to throw it at us too. So.
Yeah, I was trying to think of some. You know, there's a book Don and I have been reading called High Conflict. And because what I know is that there's a certain whoever came together for healing our city, they're people who are thirsty for relationship across race. Because if not, they wouldn't have come on every morning, right? At that time. And so they're I'm not going to use the word woke. I think we've been kind of overusing that. So, but they're kind of leading spiritually the rest of folks. And I guess I do have a question around, so High Conflict talks about how even, you know, people from the same group, because for the first time, white people don't know how to deal with their relatives at the Thanksgiving dinner table. Right. And I've heard white folks talk about that, which is a different experience than Black people have. And sort of, I mean, we can talk about that. I see a couple of hands, but I'm just curious around the struggles with race within your own group as you try to be who you are and show up and be different. Like what have people been experiencing around that? There's a couple hands, and I don't know. And if you were going to say something different, let's do that too.
I don't see any of the hands.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah, Craig has his hand.
Craig has his hand raised. There he
Craig
is.
has his hand up. There he is.
We have to let you unmute though.
Yeah.
I was going to go in a different direction, Sondra. I love your direction a lot. So let's stay there.
Okay. Well, anybody want to?
Katya.
Yeah, Katya has her hand raised.
Okay.
You're mute, so.
Yeah, I have to give them permission to unmute, so I've done that.
No, I think she's still muted.
Yeah, she is.
Okay.
There we go.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
In my fully white congregation church, we pray a lot, you know, for us and we, and it makes me nervous. And so I think I really got your sense of that, which I really appreciate, that I don't come to God as a human being separate from all others, right? But I also don't come from God in a circumscribed community. And so how can we pray within the doors of a church for we and us without it feeling like we like us and here we are and it's great. Don't you love us, God?
Yeah, you know, if I may, two people can be saying the same thing and thinking two different things, right? And it's important, I think, for us to keep our integrity. I remember when I swore the Pledge of Allegiance to become a citizen, 1983, and they asked you to swear your allegiance to your country of your birth, whatever the term is. I couldn't do it. I just didn't say that part. But you know, I said everything else. But I didn't want to just. I forgot the word that was used. It's a very strong word, and you feel like you're saying I'm no longer owning that as part of me. And but I think that we're asked to say things, and we can mean different things when we say the same thing, and I think even that becomes an opportunity for a conversation at some point, you know, because when you say we forgive us, you can just go with us. And please include me because I want to be with you. Okay, include us here, and let's change inside in that regard, and then it will flow out of us, and people will begin to sense that there's something peculiar about us and ask, what's going on? And we'll be able to share.
Yeah, Don, when you kept saying around, we could be saying things and thinking we're getting it. The problem with communication is that we think it happened. That we think we were saying something and people got it. We think it happened. But the we for me is building on what Don was saying. For example, anybody so the we is not just other African Americans. That's just right. It's not just my world is so much bigger because I understand the interconnectivity of all of us. So my we is Donald Trump. My we is Putin. Where when I'm praying, it's not, again, the thing with the great Jewish guy who said, God, I'm so glad I'm not like those people over there. And it's no, but actually you are, right? And so I try to, I think it's important for those who aren't typically included in your we. That's who becomes your we. And yeah.
So when we say forgive us our sins, it's forgive us as humanity.
Yeah. And to separate, we want to hold on to the we's are the good people, right? And the we's are the people that we would say aren't so good too. That's us too.
I want to invite Craig. He had his hand up before.
Yeah, Craig. Yeah.
And I want to give a shout out to Craig and Patricia Neal.
I'm sorry. We all know Don's running for Congress, and I know this probably isn't the right place, but here we are in the last few minutes. That's what I meant, Sondra, about taking it a different direction.
Mm-hmm.
And, that's what I had to ask about, because here are a bunch of folks. I mean, talk about the extension of the prayer tent. I mean, to want to represent the entirety of Hennepin County, plus in the seats of power in Washington. I think that's pretty remarkable. And I for one, am really curious, because I don't know when I'll get a chance to hear what you have to say. So that's what
Well, if I can say something without making a political speech.
Well, honey, can you check in with Pastor Kelly?
Yeah, I did.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
If I can say something, we've worked in the community. We've brought the community together at vigils, through the Peace Foundation, through Hands Across the North Side, through which turned into NAS, and then the Healing Our City, and all of these things. They're really spiritually driven for us, and it's about the community. And I kind of don't realize, can't kind of figure out how it happened, because we moved in to the north side in the Jordan neighborhood, and we heard the gunshots, and we said, let's start a block club. That was it. And it just kind of kept going, and it was always, let's get together with the bigger group. Let's get together with the bigger group. And so I'm going to Washington as I consider myself God's experiment, meaning I don't know how it's going to actually turn out exactly, what God's trying to invent. It's politics, it's nasty, it's a big structure, it's 400 people trying to get along with the various agendas, it's the divisiveness in Washington, it's all of that. what does it look like if you're in there really intentionally, spiritually, within the guidelines and rules and constraints and the impossibilities that we all say can't happen? What happened if I was trying to give God an extra chance to pile on to who's ever there to bring that same spirit, to add that kind of spiritual dimension to the conversations, without calling any spiritual language or, or quoting scripture or anything. Just being a good lawmaker, how would that look? What would that look like? I wonder about it. I'm very, very curious about it. Very excited to think that it's a possibility. And so you have to come with me, because this is not, I'm going to, I'm not saying I've been called by God to go to Washington or, I'm just saying I'm a person who's discovered some things along the way in terms of God's work in community through people getting together, and without, even in silence, not even saying anything. And so what can happen if I can be there like that? That's what I'm very curious about. And your prayers coming with me would be give me a great sense of peace in all of that, and hope, and give the Spirit an extra boost to have its way.
Yeah. Thank you, Don. Craig, thank you for your question. And holding this all together, I want to go back to the conversation about we. And coming together is the practice of we, and lifting up voices that are not always heard. And so I'm just so thankful for Don and Sondra for your leadership, your voice, your witness, and this practice tonight of doing we. Right? Last month we had Nikema Levy Armstrong. Tonight we're blessed to have Don and Sondra, and it's all the practice of we. And for people that are in a lot of spaces that don't do we very well. So let's continue to lift up this come together as, again, that practice of we, and that we take it back to our places, our dining room tables, our congregations, our communities. And again, I can't say enough. And Sondra, thank you for your work and your witness over many years, and however God is going to bless us to experience that leadership into the future. And that goes also for all of you, and how you're living out that calling in your lives and your daily living. So